Souls creating bonds. When we talk about the nature of who we are, we often forgive ourselves for the lack of confidence that we have in our creation with each other. This is what many are creating when they feel as if their own souls are somehow behind the scenes, watching and waiting, right? For you to justify my love, right? This is the nature of the bonding that happens when we decide to do these kinds of works. So I want to talk to you about the nature of what kinds of bonds our souls create. This is a different kind of expression. I'm not here to mince words. I love who I am. What I'm not here to do is to tell people that just because you have a fantasy about somebody means you're planting the seed for it. Okay? Many people are not aware of how much work is going on behind the scenes on the soul level. And this is how we know who we're bringing in to this vision of I love who I am. Okay, this is a program that I'm developing. It's actually a process that my soul is guiding me through. And when we tell ourselves, I am placing a limitation on who I am to be with, by saying to myself, I will not accept this trait or that characteristic. And there's a good reason for some of it. And I'm going to talk to you about the nature of creating bonds as friends versus those oh so amazing loved ones that we care for in so many ways on a soul level. Those that make our heart go pitter-patter, perhaps. Or the idea that I know who I belong with. And yet when someone else says, oh yeah, I know who that is, many are often thinking they belong with someone who is in their present, or those who are on, let's see, the past has not yet been forgotten for many. There are many souls who create with this idea that I lost my one true love forevermore, not realizing they are still creating with that soul on the other side of the veil, so to speak. It depends on what avenue of projection you want to go with. You see, I'm going to be honest about the nature of projecting a soulmate versus rejecting a soulmate. That's where many are. I reject certain souls because in essence, if you're not playing by the rules, right? My rules matter. This is the nature of how we work our hearts. We come into this world assuming that all is well on the soul level. And yet when others say there's a characteristic that you don't like as a soul partner, which is this idea that Brenda is dealing with the idea that one of her soulmates of past has and is always will be now known as I'm the smoke screen of soul. You see, it was a change made on a soul level where when she hears from that soul, she knows this one isn't good for me, right? It's literally a condemnation of her traits that others are putting out for her. Others will say, I'm perfectly content and fine having someone who smokes weed, perhaps, or cigarettes, perhaps, in their hearts, right? And if you are one of those souls that are saying, oh, I'm able to do whatever I want, she says, you are granted that. This is very much about the nature of choosing our souls that we want to bond with. Even though there are souls on the other side of the veil that will say, I was never more disturbed than when I heard Brenda reject who I was as a soul. And in essence, it's not about saying there's something wrong with those choices. But what it does is it does limit the amount of possibilities that you have. And Brenda's just fine with that. In fact, she's very forward thinking in her motion of love. Okay, so when we do this idea of I've got soulmates here already who I love and adore, we often will hear from those other souls without knowing it. We have inklings in our hearts about who we're working on or with, right? My friends and family often are the most supportive and loving, caring souls ever on this plane. That's acknowledged as a given for myself. What I don't do is demean their vision. So just because, in essence, my dad was a cigarette smoker for years and planted the vision of colon cancer for various reasons. Okay? In my mind, I know that I don't assume that everyone who does that is going to end up with some tragic vision. But what I acknowledge is that sensation of smoke is what is surrounding me. It means it's a lesson in forgiveness and a lesson in understanding the nature of where others used to say, oh, it's a brain condition. This is not what happens. Brenda knows it's a temporary state for her because, in essence, one aspect of her is still smelling the smoke of another soulmate. And she's like, I'm done with that vision. Because she chooses to say, that's not for me. It affects me. I have to relive the vision of what it was like living with a smoker. And one of my soulmates who went on to the other side of the veil actually started to smoke after we had broken up. And this is why I say, too bad for you. You see, we don't assume that there's something wrong with who they are. But what we do get to do is decide, do I still continue to create havoc with them over a choice? So in the wisest of wise, men would be saying, I need this in my life for a certain reason. And others then go, that's a key for you right there. What is it you claim you need and why is it? Right? I have my own struggles with various ideas. I drink caffeinated teas sometimes or coffees and whatnot. But it's not to the point of, oh, I can't get rid of it. You see, when there is a soulmate on the line who's saying, justice, there's another justice. This is a future projection of O'Hara. And there's someone who's saying it's not quite that. But there are too many souls who are laughing, saying, I knew this wasn't going to be about my soulmate. I love who I am. This is where you go first and foremost. You want to create that vision of I love who I am first and foremost if you're trying to draw in. And this is what people need to ask themselves. Who am I drawing into my vibration, my frequency, right? And yet, when you find the disconnect in certain souls, you have to ask yourself, what is it that I'm really working on? Is it the nature of I love who you are, I just can't live with you. I can't be with you. I can't take you anymore. This is where so many souls go. And it could be the nature of a gradual letting go versus the tragedy of a false connection. Some people come together and they feel like there's something not quite right. And that means that it's a shifting in the energy, and then we grieve the loss of somebody. And then we often can move forward in that vision of what a true soul bond is. It means when we cross over, we will often reunite with those souls and create a different aspect of who we are to work on the other side of the veil. It doesn't mean we come back in form or anything like that. It could be we reunite in the the ethereal realm. Okay, so these are more about, that's more like the astral realm. But the ethereal vision is that love is truly universal and continually expanding. So while we say that some people are hoping for a brand new prayer vigil, this is the idea of guidance, where people who are watching are saying, I want my guidance. And they think that their soulmate is just waiting for them on the other side of the veil. It's very much a disconnect from the reality of soul vision. You are always connected to your hearts. And that means those that you've created with are still there creating with you. What you don't want to do is create havoc for them, if at all possible. And this is why we tell people, please go to that place of loving who they were, wherever they were. And if they needed to have a Siggy, as someone else is coming through with, then they would be able to have that vision. But when we align with the nature of my soul loves me enough to set me free from certain souls, it means they don't have to stick around. So what I do is I accept the vision of this soul who I love and adore is no longer in the same vision or aspect of who I am. I'm no longer telling people how to be for the most part. But what I will say is, if you are affecting me in some way, shape, or form, I have a say in it. My life matters. My soul matters. And that's how we let others know on the soul level. They don't get to come in and cause havoc. Okay, just because they were, friends at one point, it depends on the nature of it. It's not about creating havoc. It's about a learning experience that I have to go through sometimes when it comes to the idea of cigarette smoking. And so many people that I know give it up and move on to get, various illnesses. It's an opportunity to create an exit point at this point for certain souls. That's the nature of what those are when we inhale the toxins all around us. And many people will not like that. But that's what that is. It's the same thing of you creating that vision of what's the energy behind a token of friendship. So I'm getting a token of friendship because people start to understand what that means. It doesn't mean you will or not, right? It's the same aspect. There's a vision of what is created with a cigarette. It's a pleasure principle, right? It's an addictive substance that's now known, and it creates havoc for many, depending on how you choose to partake in it. Now, this is not about belittling those who happen to smoke or drink or whatever, okay? This is the nature of true evolving of what we are. I no longer caretake the hearts of those who feel like they are trying to impose their values on me. This is where most are. But do you understand how those of us who come together with the same sorts of values about who we are to be will often flourish in the vision of it? I no longer need to sell cocaine. That's where Wesley Snipes is talking, and it's not about selling it. He's like, I imbibed upon it, right? That would be a revealing of something that was already known for the most part, right? He's the one coming through saying, I'm not going to authorize that vision as anything other than mastery. But in essence, many souls are creating from this idea that they evolved from that in a previous journey. Let's put it that way. And so many souls are thinking, oh, I get to be whoever I want to be because I own the vision of I'm famous and I have that privilege of being, let off the hook. We're going to talk about the nature of what that is at another time, because this vision is about souls creating bonds. Now, what kind of bond would he and I have versus the nature of, is she going to hold that against him? Had she invited that soul's vision in some way, it was brought to her. They have a bond of friendship. She wouldn't hold anyone as less than. What she would say is, I see you for who you are. I see how you are in your work. I see how you're beautiful for what you are trying to portray to us on the screen and off the screen. There's a different version of who we are whenever we go private in our private lives. This is where a lot of celebrities are. They're very private and withdrawn and wanting to see where their souls are going. But what happens is that in the moment when someone is making some kind of accusation, right? There's no accusation. It's understood on a soul level. Her soul knows who to bring through. And it was basically that idea of this men and women dynamic that we've got going on this plane, where women are now the rage, right? How many men are feeling demeaned in their visions based on the idea that they happen to identify as a certain sex? And we're not going to talk about that level of understanding on the soul level about gender identity, okay? It's very fluid. I'm just going to say that, okay, first and foremost. But on this plane, we know what we're working with here. We know men and women are trying to find those special someones in their lives. Everyone! Whether you identify as male or female, okay? So let's just say people are identifying and trying to find their soulmates, okay? What does that mean? It means that we often feel like we connect with certain people in the mind, and then we realize, oh, I didn't realize that they had this going on or this going on, and now it seems to be an issue for me. Or people start to change. And they rise up, and then people say, I don't know who you are, but you feel good, you look good, right? And yet people don't like that. Okay? People are often nervous around people who go through mass transformations. And this is what people are starting to do on this plane. Massive transformations in not just their appearance, but the way that they are, the way they portray themselves, the way they handle themselves. The ideas that are coming upon the screen, that idea that a soulmate is forever is absolutely true. It's just, it's not in the way that many think. Forever is not about time. It's an energy signature that many of us are creating with, and then we attract those souls into our hearts, and we create more of those bonds of friendship or loving, caring soulmates. But this is the nature of what kind of bonds we're trying to create. And many are fascinated with this idea of my soulmate is forever. It's as long as your souls decide to create with each other. And then your souls will vibrate into a beautiful vision of I am now free and clear of any and all vibrations that are no longer viable for me. You see, this is that idea that many are holding on to, this idea that love continues forever. Of course it does, but why are you limiting it to only men or women, right? That idea of those souls who are saying, I'm not identifying as anything other than who I am in this moment. And that's the beauty of who you are, right? It doesn't matter what you identify with. We often have those soul connections. That's a very different idea of soul groupings, right? I've got a soul group, soul family, whatnot, different kinds of bonds, the bonds of friendship, the bonds of war. We're going to talk about the bonds of those, quote, soldiers of fortune that are coming on the screen as well, saying we've bonded in the acts of war. Those are different kinds of bonding experiences. Okay, and those bonds of friendship are often lifelong. That's a beautiful vision. We bonded over freedom is where many are wanting to go. These are those ideas of how are we utilizing our energy to make those bonds. Are we bonding because we want to be free and clear of chaos? Because that's what a lot of us create sometimes. I'm going to be honest. I've had my hat handed to me by Wesley Snipes at some point, right? He never knew me, but his soul came through for me. And I gratefully say thank you for shifting the dynamic away from the idea that men are to be victimized on this plane versus a uniting of those who can honor who we are in our own way. Okay, but that doesn't mean I go off and I say, oh, okay, I'm going to have a relationship other than the acknowledgement of they are souls and they matter. But in essence, that does not give anyone access to who I am as a free and clear soul with my own soul. That's the ultimate bond that you have with your own hearts, your own vision. But it's your soul, your vision, your love, and your life. And so this is why we want people to focus on the nature of what are we creating here in our vision. But when you come to the idea of I've already got my soul, bringing me my wisdom, that's when you start to realize, oh, who am I vibrating with? Am I creating those situations that I need to grow from? Or am I inviting the pleasant discussions of my addiction is my own? I thank you for acknowledging it as a beautiful learning lesson for myself and my friends and family. We all learn from those struggles. Okay, we all have those visions of sympathy and empathy for those who are creating from this idea that I've lost something in that translation. I no longer allow for souls who think they create havoc to come through, correct? He was a havoc maker in certain mindsets. But he says, I'm over that. I don't need to create havoc for my sweethearts. Okay, that's where he's at. Many men are saying, I don't have to create with this idea that every person I've been with in the sack, so to speak, is a soulmate now. But there is an energy there that will always be eternally acknowledged because you are sharing in a way that is beyond most people's understanding. That's why many of those books talk about that idea of, one love and whatnot. It's the nature of the creation of what's going on in the mind of both partners, or however many are involved, and what that dynamic creates. It's never belittled, but this is why that chaos can come in, because people start thinking soulmates are forever. And sometimes in the name of somebody else's vision, we say we have to let them go so we can create more and more visions of love for who we are. I love myself when I love another is where many go. They love the idea of being in love. Okay, versus the connection that we create as souls, which comes through very strong. I love who I am, and I know my soulmates do too. That's why I don't begrudge them their vision, and I don't tell them how to be. But what I do is I expect mutual respect and understanding. And if someone can't say to themselves, I deserve better, that's another vision that many women are going to be creating when they look at that idea of who am I in the mirror, right? This is that nature of like the movies that are coming out, right? Saying society is placing so much burden on the women to figure out what's going on, and the men are starting to become more and more aware of their own influence and their own energy, not only in who they are, but who they are attracting and who they want to be on their quote sides. This is not about a man versus a woman or any other idea, but there is definitely that vision of it in the world, and we're trying to align people with the idea that there are souls who are for and against Brenda's vision. They want to hear the nitty-gritty of what a soulmate excuse her, is on the other side of the veil. We create continually with our soulmates. in one way, shape, or form when we're still on this plane. They're often there creating with us as loving, caring, adoring fans or memories, right? How many people are assuming that a fan can somehow imbibe upon a soul and say, oh, I know they're the one for me? You will not know that vision for sure unless you've created a dynamic where you are getting your own guidance, or you have experienced the vision where you are directly communicating via telepathy with them. And that's what Brenda knows what that is, to hear the visions of what your soulmates are saying to you. And that's not always easy, because some of them are not willing to come in until there are other forms of agreements that are going to be worked out or let go. Okay? There's always more going on behind the scenes when it comes to souls. And that's why we want everyone to feel beautiful for who they are, because then that's what you attract. I love who I am, and yet we want others to, what? Grab on and hold on for dear life, because they feel like they must be that person too. What you don't want to do is create a sense of vibrancy that is only based on who you are as a sexual being, perhaps. You want to be aligned with the beauty of I am, whatever I am in every moment. I don't need to be someone else's token of achievement, or the beauty of who I am is mine. What we create is beauty no matter what, based on our souls. But what we attract into our heart is what we're feeling in the moment. And if I'm feeling disfigured, there are people who are disfigured from various accidents. Brenda is one of them. She was at some point with scars and whatnot, having reconstructive surgery, right? And yet, in my mind as a teenager, I still knew I'm bringing in amazing souls for my partners. That's who I am. I always know that I do that. I don't have to worry about who comes into my vision, because I know my soul has that understanding of what's right for Brenda is beauty. She will never deny her strength in that one. And she gives everyone else that opportunity to remember to be optimistic about who you are and where you are to be. If I needed a soulmate to come into my life, I would reach out and grab one, is where some people go. They have that ability to say, oh, that's the one for me, and I'm going to sit there and honor it and, go get it, right? That's not how it works. What you're doing is you're making an opportunity happen that may or may not create for a certain type of soul bond to exist. So that's why many people are out putting all kinds of feelers out for who they want to come into their life. And then others say, oh, no, I don't need that kind of vision. I already know where I'm headed. And that's why people honor that, because it's not about trying to create a scenario, but it's about making sure that we are open to doing that work, because it takes a lot of work to bring in a soul that wants to be acknowledged for his beauty in whatever way, shape, or form he was brought in. He's a beautiful soul, by the way. Okay? His vision is, I love women, and I will always adore them. I may not treat the women of the world in the way that they want. And that's the nature of where people have to come together and say, I matter. Oh, boy, do I matter. And if people are like, oh, well, I've got that token of appreciation on the scene, Brenda says, I know who I am, and I'll bet you know who you are. You see, it's that idea of honoring on a soul level, right, versus who they are here. That's another thing. It's a very different experience when you go to the idea of we're bonding on a soul level, and I can bring through their guidance or their souls. Some people say weapons are brought through. for Gene Kelly. That's another soul that Brenda attracts because of the nature of, like, I love to dance. And his vision is I'm of the old, and so we still identify for the most part as males in this world. So we're going to keep with that vision of male and female most often. But there is a shift going on in many of the younger generations where we're not labeling ourselves as much, correct? Oh, we are. And that's the nature. We're speaking to the nature of the general audience. It's not about specific gender identity issues. So if you're getting offended because I'm saying that there are ideas about soulmates, soulmates have nothing to do with gender, to be honest. This is about people who are creating. And that's the same thing with soul bonds. You know, if you decided, oh, I'm only going to hang around this type of person or this type of person, you're going to limit your vision. But if you say to yourself, I want to be happy and fulfilled and completely like embodied with who I am, I would realize that my soul is trying to embody the vision of me as a child, having to go through the vision of I'm breathing a lot of smoke in. And as a teen, and as a young adult. And that is part of what I get. It's an embodiment of the understanding of what that was like for myself. As if I don't remember. But it's part of it, because it was part of that understanding of, oh, wow, isn't it nice to be free and clear of that? For me. Now, others are saying, I've had to do this work so many times that I'm afraid of who I am, right? Don't take any vision as a disparaging of who you are. Trust me, I know how hard it is. If I go to this idea of addiction, I can tell you about the ideas I've had about weight and, well, whatnot, caffeine. I don't have any other quote addictions. I've never touched drugs other than what was given to me for like, you know, after surgery and whatnot. And my mind is free and clear from the travesty of drug addiction. Let's put it that way. That's my soul. That's how my soul knows to erase the vision of what love comes through that isn't abiding by the vision of depression is often the struggle for many who feel like they've lost their soul mates. I went through that. And then I freed myself from that vision, only to have it come back and hit me in the butt and say, get out and have some fun. Our souls who have collided often are more about, I want you to go have fun and enjoy the rest of your journey. Even though you feel you are without me, I am there holding your hand. Brenda gets that sensation brought to her by her soul to let her know when one of her soulmates is with her in his heart. It's an amazing journey. Many will not understand what that's like. That's one of those physical characteristics that others would say would scare the crap out of them, but it's not. Once you go to the trust of I'm embodied by my own vision, my highest vision of who I am, my soul, it's a leveling up of who we are. It's not perfect for Brenda. Trust me, as her soul, she's very wise and serene, but she wants to have so much fun, and she's around so many people who are so serious or so disturbing or so like, oh my gosh, the world is so bad. And she's like, can we just let go of the pain and torture and all of that for just a minute so we can focus on the beauty of who we are? That's the nature of the Seth material. And I want people to really honor that vision, as well as others that you may know about how we create. And there's nothing wrong with the idea of I need to create change. But we have to be able to focus on ourselves first. I love who I am. Set me free. That's where some of us go. I love who I am. Set me free. Because we feel like there's some cord of attachment and whatnot. We're not going to create those for ourselves. What we're doing is we're creating an atmosphere of rejection often in those ideas. And instead we say, oh my gosh, I love myself and what I created when I was a younger person. Wasn't that an amazing experience? Even through the tragedy and the pain of it, look at how I am now. How many people need to be consoled for their visions of who they are now versus let's cheer ourselves on. We're good. We made it. We made it through. Let's congratulate ourselves on making it through whatever we've made it through. And then we'll start to hear the souls on the other side of the veil who will start cheering. Brenda hears claps, applause, and cheers. She does not get booed. But that's the nature of what happens when you expand your awareness into, I've got a crowd who's cheering for me. It's not necessarily the souls here who are watching, but it's the souls who are with me in their hearts on a soul level. Okay, so with that, I want you to understand you're bonding with your own soul as well as others. And it's an amazing journey. It's a TikTok video also that I bond with. I do TikTok videos. That's where I was creating a lot of havoc. But there's a lot of beauty on that station as well. And I want to honor those who are starting to make these transitions into honoring younger generations who are also imbibing upon various aspects of cigarettes, thinking that it's somehow better. We want to advise the younger generations in particular that just because in your mind you're thinking that, there's a subconscious vision that knows that much of that stuff is still being inhaled or is affecting of the body. So unless you're feeling, oh, so good, this is the best thing for me, don't imbibe upon it, okay? So with that, I want to say thank you. And remember, stay curious, wise, and soulful.